Everyone thinks they know who made Clark Kent who he is in Smallville. Jonathan Kent, the father, the moral compass. And yeah, he mattered. But here's the problem. That's only half the story. Because Clark didn't become Superman just by being taught what's right. He became Superman when doing the right thing. Stopped being easy, and when you really break it down, two names stand out. Lionel Luthor and Oliver Queen. But only one of them changed Clark at his core. Clark's early journey is shaped by three core influences. Jonathan Kent gives him his moral foundation. Right and wrong are clear, protect people, and don't misuse power. That's who Clark wants to be. Martha Kent adds emotional balance. When Clark feels isolated or overwhelmed, she helps him process it. She keeps him grounded, reminding him that his humanity matters just as much as his abilities. That stability becomes a constant in his life. And then there's Jor-El, who reminds Clark that his life isn't just his own, that something bigger is waiting for him whether he's ready or not. Together, they prepare him. They build his values, his empathy, and sense of purpose. But there's one thing they don't give him: real uncertainty. Because it's easy to be good when you know what the right choice is. But what happens when you don't? When motives are unclear and when every option has consequences, and doing the right thing actually costs you something? That's where everything changes. That's where Lionel Luthor comes in. He doesn't guide Clark, he disrupts him. Lionel operates differently. No clear intentions, no easy trust, and no safety. Every interaction with him feels like a test, because it is. With Lionel, Clark can't rely on instinct. He has to think, question, and adapt. He starts reading people instead of reacting to them. He begins to anticipate motives instead of waiting for outcomes. Jonathan taught Clark what's right, but Lionel? He forced him to figure out what to do when right and wrong weren't obvious anymore. And that's a completely different level of growth. Lionel also sees Clark differently, not as a kid trying to live a normal life, but as someone important, someone powerful, someone the world will depend on. And that perspective forces Clark to step into something bigger before he's ready. Now, Oliver Queen does something completely different. He doesn't test Clark. He shows him the future. Oliver's already operating as a hero. He's leading, making decisions, and taking risks. And for Clark, this is one of the first times he sees what being a hero actually looks like in motion. Not thinking, not debating, acting. Because sometimes, waiting is the risk. Oliver expands Clark's perspective. Helping people isn't just about reacting anymore. It can be intentional, strategic, and bigger than Smallville. But Oliver isn't perfect. His methods can be aggressive. His decisions don't always align with Clark's instincts. And that tension matters because Clark doesn't become Oliver. He defines himself against him. Lionel builds pressure. Oliver builds execution. Lionel forces Clark inward. Oliver pushes him outward. One teaches him how to think. The other shows him how to act. And becoming Superman requires both. But here's the part most people miss. Only one of them shaped Clark before he was ready. That's why Lionel's impact runs deeper. He challenges Clark when everything is still forming, before confidence, clarity, and before identity. He forces Clark to develop something more than morality. He develops judgment. Clark stops reacting emotionally and starts weighing consequences, thinking beyond the moment and understanding the cost of his decisions. Lionel didn't just influence what Clark does. He changed how Clark thinks, and that changes everything that comes after. By the time Oliver enters Clark's life, Clark is already becoming more stable, confident, and prepared. Oliver builds on that, but Lionel helped create it. Let's be honest, calling Lionel a mentor feels wrong, because he lies, he manipulates, and he crosses lines. But that's exactly why he matters, because the world Clark is stepping into looks a lot more like Lionel than it does the Kent farm. Lionel forces Clark to question everything, to think independently, to make decisions without certainty, and live with the consequences. It's not guidance, it's pressure. And that pressure builds resilience. Jonathan Kent made Clark a good man. Oliver Queen showed him how to be a hero. But Lionel Luthor, he forced him to become Superman. And that's the difference. So now the question is, was Lionel really a mentor? Or just the challenge Clark had to survive? Because sometimes, the people who shape us the most aren't the ones guiding us. They're the ones pushing us. So I want to know, who actually had the biggest impact on Clark? Jonathan, Lionel, Oliver? Or is there someone we're completely overlooking? If you enjoyed this breakdown, there's more deep dives into Smallville coming, from character arcs to the moments that defined Clark's journey. Thanks for watching.